Hello and welcome to Podtoid. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
I'm Charlotte.
Mi nombre es Occams.
Is it nombre number, or do I just not remember anything from Spanish?
No, that's fuck y'all, because that's what the Google Translate just told me. So y'all take it up with them.
I just remember there was some educational cartoon character called El Nombre.
Yeah.
And he was like a mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, Google Translate, take it up with them. I'm just reading what they told me.
Oh, I will. I will take it up with them. I will write them a letter ruining our show like that.
Ask to talk to Google Translate's manager.
Yeah.
Or Occams, maybe you could just, not ease off on the cultural appropriation there.
Excuse you, I'm a straight white male. That's like in my genetic code.
I'm really glad that Charlotte knows who El Nombre is. It's usually when I come up with any kind of old school reference, like no one knows what I'm talking about.
No, that was on when I was a kid, like very, very young kid, but I do remember even bits of the theme tune.
Yeah, he was like a Zorro type character and he wrote numbers in the sand.
Yeah.
And that's Podtoid. Good night, everyone.
Was it like an animated thing or like a puppet or?
Yeah, it was like puppet. It was like stop motion.
Okay.
It was just it wasn't even its own show. It was like a segment in a general educational program. Okay,
so kind of like our Schoolhouse Rocks.
Yeah, not nearly as cool though. Not as much flares and nationalism.
Yeah. Well, this is episode 456. Thank you for joining us today. It is our last show of August, as we will be taking next week off. But the show should be a good one. We're going to be talking about some 13 Sentinels, Fast and Furious, Liquid Television, and then a little bit later, we're going to be looking at DC Fandome. Sorry, Charlotte.
Oh.
It's your favorite subject, superhero. But Chris, welcome back.
Hi. I forgot I'd gone.
Yeah. Because time is moving both too fast and too slow.
Yeah, but I'm back, and it's the old theme tune again. There was a different theme tune last week.
That is true. Oh, someone's messaging me on Skype. Oh, that's what he looks like?
Oh,
yeah, that's El Nombre. Yeah.
We'll definitely put a picture of that in the video for this so people will know what we're talking about here.
Anyway, it's good to be back.
Yeah. I don't know how all of your guys' week was, but mine has been spent inside because it's August, which means California is on fire. And also Nevada's on fire. And because of that, all of the smoke from those fires are just billowing into my area and then settling because I live in a goddamn valley. So I go outside and I can't even see the mountains in the distance because there's just so much haze. Finally, people who are against wearing masks are finally wearing masks just because the air is so bad to breathe.
Two things. Firstly, you said the smoke was billowing into your area. Brilliant.
Thank you.
And secondly, there's literally an anti-masker protest happening like just around the corner from you right now.
Sounds like you guys need a good forest fire or 20.
It's not even just it's not even just anti-masker. It's kind of just anti-everything.
Maybe just a fire.
Yeah,
doesn't need to
maybe
be a
just a
fire.
Maybe maybe just a fire started by me. Like
people. Yeah. So that's been, and thankfully there are no like fires in my direct area because I think all of our trees burned down like 3 years ago. So we have to wait. We have to wait till they grow again before lightning starts taking them out too. But we have a good show for you. And before we get into anything, I wanted to start us off with a nice story today. I know I usually start with like criminal activities or weird sex things or like a story that's going in one way, but then it goes in a completely horrifying different direction. But today's just a simple, nice story out of Switzerland. Last week, a chocolate lint factory, LINDT, just for people who don't know or maybe heard me say lint, one of my favorite chocolate brands, by the way, gave its surrounding area a bit of a strange weather phenomenon. So at this plant that is in a place called Olten, there is a room where roasted cocoa nibs are cooled. And something went wrong with the cooling ventilation in this room, and all the fine cocoa powder, instead of being cooled down, was sucked out of the room, shot into the air, where wind patterns helped snow down chocolate on a local community. Why can't I get that in 2020? Why do I have to get all the crap in 2020? Why do I have to deal with smoke in 2020 and this town gets goddamn snowing chocolate?
Because it's Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some magical ass shit.
Yeah, like CJ, you think this is like a weird story. This is just like, that was just a weather report. Like you know those lint bunnies? That's just their rabbits.
Oh, I remember I don't know if it's still on, but there's the reality show The Amazing Race. Went to Switzerland and probably for 20 or 10 of its different seasons. But one time I was watching it and they went to a chocolatier, and god damn, that was just the most delicious thing to watch them make a chocolate bunny. Episodes like that are why I'm so fat.
You need a minute?
Yeah.
Do you all remember? It was a while ago. Do you all remember I told you a story on this show about how I had some lint bunnies when I was with the girlfriend of the time, but we didn't want to eat them, so they just sat in the fridge for ages because they were just.
Yes, I do remember this.
We couldn't bring ourselves to break their heads off, so they just sat at the back of the fridge forever.
I think that was brought upon by a listener question on the strangest way to destroy a chocolate bunny.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember now.
How did I remember that? I have a shit memory. Wow. Sadly, it was only a light dusting, just a little bit of chocolate powder, but it was enough to be found on cars, buildings, and plants. The lint factory did offer to pay for cleanup on the mishap, but as of the publication of the article that I read this on, nobody took them up on it. I imagine you just start collecting that chocolate for yourself.
I would just put on a shirt made of donuts and run naked through the town.
Oh, man. So I thought that was a nice, quaint, fun story to start us off with before we get talking about games, but let's go ahead and get into that. And we're going to start with Chris. And Chris, you're going to talk about something I know you were super excited for. Like, this was just your number one game of 2020. Fast and Furious Crossroads.
Yeah, it's just part of a week of pretty mediocre games I've had to experience, to be honest. I don't hold anything personal against it, but no, it's just not very good. So the Fast and Furious Crossroads game it's two games. It's a multiplayer, which I'm not going to waste time going into because there's nobody playing it, and a main story mode that's actually a canon Fast and Furious story. It's supposed to fit between the last film and the next film that we're still to get because of COVID, but. It has these two original protagonists, and they're forced to team up with Letty and Dom from Michelle Rodriguez and Vin Diesel from the films against this Moroccan mob known as the Tadakul, which is Crossroads in Arabic, hence the name of the game. But what this boils down to is just like a bunch of really repetitive driving missions. You bounce between different cars and different characters, but these missions are just dull. Like some of them, they're like chases and takedowns. Aren't too bad, but there's a whole load of them that are just like these drives where it's just like go and meet somebody, and it takes like a good 6 minutes of in-game time to just drive to meet the person, or like go and investigate these 3 buildings, and the buildings are like 3 or 4 minutes apart, and so it's just this casual driving from building to building. And that stuff's so weird because whilst they have that stuff in games like Grand Theft Auto, the whole thing with Grand Theft Auto is if ever you get bored, there's a million other things you can do in the blink of an eye. But in this game, that's the only thing you can do. So it's not like while driving on the way, you can stop off at a place or you can get a haircut or it's just drive to this place. It'll take you 5 minutes. And you drive there and you meet. And then occasionally, like in between this, you have these legitimate missions that are like steal this thing. Or also, I said this in my review. Does anybody ever want to do a tail the car without being spotted mission in any driving game ever again?
I would like to extend that to any game ever again, not just driving, any game.
They do have a couple of like follow people missions in Ghosts of Tsushima that aren't awful because they make it really easy, and the way the path is set, it kind of guides you so that you're always sort of hidden. You have to really try to go out of your way to be seen. So
right. But so there's just an odd design to some of these missions. One I really like. There's one where you're driving up a desert road for ages, and it's up a mountain, and the characters are talking among themselves while you're driving, and the game realizes that might be a bit boring, so it has you dodging these falling rocks, but the rocks don't appear to be falling from anywhere. They're just falling. And the characters are, like we talked about with the Avengers conversations, the characters are just casually talking about the mission whilst they're in the middle of a rock fall. And it's that kind of bad design that's throughout the game. Infamously, a lot of people have brought this up in the review. There's a mission where you're supposed to ram a truck off the road without raising its suspicions.
How does that work?
You've got to keep ramming it, and there's a suspicion meter. But if you ram it too many times without taking it off the road, then it figures out what you're doing and the mission's over.
So like 19 rams are okay.
Yeah, exactly.
20 rams, you've gone too far.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
I could just imagine the driver of that is like, why do I keep hitting all of these weird potholes? Is my car just shaking? Boy, this road is bad. Oh, there's another one. God,
it's so weird. It's so, and basically, like the thing that really I really kind of realized about the game is your mind just wanders while you're playing it. Like while you're driving to these places, while you're going to these destinations, even during the chases, you find yourself just thinking about other things. You find yourself just thinking about what you're doing later, or that thing you've got to take care of, or whatever. It just allows you to kind of drift away from the game while you're playing it, which in like this kind of heist car, fast car thing that's got to be kind of an automatic fail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The lighting's great. Like the lighting in it's really good, and the cityscapes are really attractive. You go to New Orleans at one point, it looks really good. But the cars, and in particular the character models, are really kind of old school. The character models are very last gen, and you kind of just get bored of the whole thing before you reach the climax. The climax does involve you chasing a space shuttle that's traveling horizontally across the ground. So at least that's in keeping with like how stupid like the movies get, how ridiculous the movies get. So there's a rocket about to take off into space, and you missile it, and it falls horizontally, and then still just takes off. And it's just a rocket going across a field, a full-size space shuttle.
I'm now kind of disappointed we won't be able to see that in a Fast and Furious movie because, they're probably not going to use that same gimmick again.
Right. And like the weirdest part about the whole thing is it's made by Slightly Mad Studios, who are the guys who do the Project Cars games, and those games are obviously great. So I don't know if it was just a time thing. I don't know if it was like you've got to not. The game has a kind of a rushed feel to it. There's bits where plot points are sometimes it's got cinematics, but sometimes important plot points just appear on loading screens. Like it just says like, oh, the reason you're going to this place now is because they did a computer test and the computers said the satellite points to here. So I guess because if Slightly Mad had put like the time into this that they'd put into a Project Cars game, you can tell it would have been absolutely fine. But this is obviously just some kind of side throwaway thing. It's not bad funny like Ride to Hell. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if people are hearing this and they're like, oh, that sounds like it'd at least be good for a laugh. It's not really a funny game. It's just kind of a dull game. I do kind of like the characters in it. The characters are pretty good. And it's even funny on occasion. Like sometimes the script has some genuinely funny, some very knowing stuff in. Two of the characters you play have to go into this military installation. And in order to go in undercover, they have to learn Arabic, which they appear to do just like in an hour. Like they don't know any Arabic, and then they just go into this base and they're both just busting out like Arabic. And I don't think that's a plot hole. I think the game knows that that's like ridiculous.
Or they actually paid money for the premium version of Duolingo.
Maybe, yeah. But one point I will make that's really notable about the game, despite everything I've just said, of the three main protagonists of the game, who are Letty from the movies and Cam and Vienna, who are the new characters. Two of them are non-white women, and Cam is non-binary. And like, I don't know if I'll ever play another video game with that much inclusivity in its protagonists, but this game has it. And that's kind of like something that's really to be celebrated. It's just a shame the game's terrible.
And it's really strange of all the movie franchises turned into video games that this is the one that goes with that level of inclusivity on its lead characters. Because the two things I most associate with the Fast and the Furious franchise are awesome car stunts and then women in tank tops and short shorts dancing on top of cars before said car stunts. So maybe the audience has broadened since I last saw a Fast and Furious movie, but it definitely seems like a franchise that was kind of developed to be, aimed at the male demographic has expanded in a way that you could actually get away with this kind of casting.
Yeah, it's as far as I'm aware, there's kind of a degree of very mild progressiveness to those Fast and Furious films, like as they go along. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's funny that in a time when we're hearing like other publishers are literally like throwing up at the idea of just having a woman as a protagonist, one single woman. Like this game has two women, neither of whom are white, and a non-binary character. And in a way, there's kind of a disappointment of like, that's the most inclusive lead cast I've ever played within a video game, but it's in this kind of garbage Fast and Furious game.
Ah, that is a shame.
And also, the game's $60, so this isn't like a $15 Steam deal. It's like it's a full price game. Because I guess Vin Diesel's got to get that salary from somewhere. Like when he didn't do the voices for free.
Yeah. I just remember when this thing was announced at the Game Awards and just how sad it all kind of was that this was the final announcement of the night, and both Michelle Rodriguez and Vin Diesel both looked drunk up on stage, and then to show the videos like, oh, what a crappy end of this show.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain Michelle Rodriguez is actually an alcoholic because I've seen her drunk and just interviews in things a lot more than I've seen her sober.
Well, you remember why she got fired from Lost, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Her blonde lady.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to myself. I've been playing several games this week, some of which I can't talk about because they're under embargo, even though they were released originally 19 years ago. But one I have been playing that I can talk about is 13 Sentinels Aegis. I don't know. I'll just have to wait for the English translation to come out for this game. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim from Vanillaware. I can't talk about anything more than the prologue because everything else is under embargo. But the prologue does give you a good feel of what kind of characters these are, how the storytelling aspect of this game will go, and then what the combat will be like. And honestly, the combat looks like it's from a completely different game. Certainly not one made by Vanillaware, with an art direction that we are also, hopefully all of us, are so familiar with by now. Kind of the best way to describe how this real-time strategy game plays is a bit like the ATB system from Final Fantasy. So you make your move and then you wait for the cooldown to end, and then you can go and make another move. And enemies have the same kind of restrictions on them. They can move and make their attack on you, and you have time to get out of the way of their attack if you have the ability to do so, if you're not in cooldown. And in the prologue, you get to know the 4 different generations of Sentinels. I don't have them all written out right here because, again, just the prologue. But there are 4 different types, and there's like a generation that is a flying type that does really well against other flying kaiju. And then there's I think the first generation is all just ground walkers, and they're really good for up close attacks. So you have a different combination and strategy with each of these Sentinels you control. And so far, I've had matches where I have up to 6 different ones under my control, and it's all actually under your control. It's not like a lot of games nowadays where you only control one and then you set an attack pattern for your other ones, either to be aggressive or to be a little more careful. Like a lot of RPGs do that nowadays. There are several different types of kaiju, and they are called kaiju throughout in the prologue, and they're all pretty mechanical, and I think they're all based off of old classic literature, and I think I can't mention what book they're all from, but I think if you've seen the trailers, you could probably figure it out for yourself if you know any classic sci-fi literature. Right. It's an interesting system But the prologue really only gives a brief look at the combat, and so once I finally get into playing the full game after I get done with everything else I have to do this over the next week, very busy week ahead for me, hopefully it'll be able to really start to shine. Because right now it's just kind of okay, and I really want to see how far it goes. I think as for the story, Vanillaware isn't afraid to try and confuse players. It's not particularly difficult to figure out what's going on, but there are a lot of characters that are introduced right away. There are a lot of time periods at play because there is a time travel element, and the story is not told in any linear fashion. So you'll start at the end of this prologue at the beginning of playing it, and then you'll jump back to the beginning of the story of the prologue, and then you'll jump to the middle, and then you'll jump to the 1940s, and then you'll jump to 2064. So it's really all over the place. There is some really good characterization in here. You have a couple of characters that are really obsessed with sci-fi kaiju films that they call Demos, but is really just clearly Godzilla. There's another girl who's obsessed with UFOs and has an encounter with one that looks to be like it's leading in a fun direction, at least from the prologue. The adventure portion here, I think what Vanillaware is doing has the great art direction that they're known for. The lighting in particular in these kind of dilapidated buildings that you are inside for most of the game so far is just phenomenal. One little thing that's annoying about it, though, is that there are a few elements with the conversation system. Like you'll be listening to someone talking, you'll get a keyword, and you can go to a menu and think about the keyword, and then you can use that keyword with a character, either the one who said it or another one, to kind of get more information out of them. And so because of that, I think maybe because of that, there's a tendency that if you're speaking with a character and they finish what they're saying, you have to initiate the conversation again to keep them talking further. So it's not like they have an entire spiel to get out. Like, let's say there's no keywords that you're getting from them. There's no other characters to talk to. You're only talking to this character. For some reason, you have to keep hitting, they'll only talk for a short while. Then you have to hit X to keep them going for the next part, and then hit X to keep them going for the next part. It's kind of annoying, although
that's pretty old school. Like
it is
that's the way that kind of late 80s, 90s adventure games were.
I wish it was a little more smooth. I do like all the dialogue that I've had so far. It's, like I said, really good characterization of these characters. All the characters right now, they're all kind of young people. They're not all necessarily high school students. I know that it's kind of a point of contention with some people. Most of them are, but some of them aren't, even if they're wearing the uniform. There is one storyline that I am kind of focused on right now, because there is a character who, when you first meet them, is feminine, and then when you meet them the second time, they are masculine. So I'm curious to see how Vanillaware, and more specifically the localization team at Atlas, is handling a trans storyline, given that it's Atlas, and a lot of people have played Catherine and know that maybe they don't always put that in the best light. So I'm looking at it with open ears and open eyes just to see how it goes. But hopefully this is not where we've seen some trans storylines and trans characters go in 2020 in regards to Catherine Full Body on Switch and Deadly Premonition 2. And Occams, I know you're interested in this. Because this is a Vanillaware game, there is at least one massively breasted female character.
Thank God.
Yeah,
the status quo is kept.
And she's the school nurse for extra fantasy.
Well, I don't know how much you can get into it, but I mean, is it fun?
So the prologue,
because I pretty much day one buy every Vanillaware game because they're gorgeous and they're fun. This looks so tedious and boring to me, and it bums me out a lot.
I like that after you asked, it just started with so.
It's tough to say because I'm of the opinion that not every game needs to be fun, and that some games are worthwhile in different ways that don't necessarily equate to fun. Visual novels, for instance, to me are not fun, but they're interesting in other ways that would make me recommend them. And this is kind of going down that path where the combat for the prologue was a little too training wheels to really see how far it goes, to really get a good idea of how fun it can be. But the other half of the game is basically just a visual novel that is not like visual novels you played before. It's presented as a side-scrolling adventure game, but with no action, no anything other than going up and talking to different people. It's so far what I've played, and I have not played every Vanillaware game. I've not played Grim Grimoire. It's completely different than anything I've played from the studio, though. Like, this is not Muramasa. This is not Odin Sphere. This is not Dragon's Crown. Those are a lot more action oriented, and this is just a completely different direction for the studio. So the prologue probably does go on for too long in regards to training you for how to use the combat system, because well before I reached the final fight of this combat system of the prologue, I was already well versed in it, so I didn't really need all of this extra stuff. But it's mostly long to set up all of these different storylines that you're going to be going through with the narrative.
And even if this game isn't my cup of tea, hi Kat, I really applaud them for trying something new. I love to see studios try new things. At least they're trying to think outside the box and be creative, and that's always a good thing.
Whew. Okay, I need something to drink now, but let's go ahead and move on to Occams. Occams, Are you going to take us back to the 80s right now?
I'm going to take you back to the 90s.
Okay, I can't remember when Liquid Television was. So
Liquid Television, yeah, I actually had to look it up because my memory is a little hazy on it. But it was 91 to 95. Apparently, there was a reboot a few years ago that I wasn't aware of, but that doesn't matter. So I was thinking of Occam's comfort food, and that's a strange basket of crickets.
Basket of crickets.
Yeah, it's the little colloquialism, basket of crickets. And one of the things I really cite is a huge influence in my life in terms of like how the things I'm interested in, how I absorb media, pop culture, different things, is the show called Liquid Television. And for those of you who don't know, 91 to 95, it was a kind of it was an animation showcase, just different little segments. They rarely had anything to do with one another. A lot of times they're almost serialized to where you would see one segment and have to watch another episode to follow like the part two. And this show launched 1,000 ships. The first Beavis and Butthead Frog Baseball, the infamous Frog Baseball, was such an uproar when it came out. Was on Liquid Television, which of course launched the show and everything else. The first Aeon Flux segment came from Liquid Television, which launched the show and then the movie and everything else. And I have just an adoration for Aeon Flux that is borderline creepy. I love Aeon Flux. And that luckily I will see 91 to 95, so that was right around puberty for me. So that was an interesting time, me and Aeon Flux. It's just the animation's great. It's by a guy named Peter Chung, who hasn't done enough lately, but he's just got a beautiful animation style. All the characters are just weird and twisted and kind of lithe, and everyone's in bondage gear, and it's kind of like a Mobius sci-fi comic meets maybe like a heroin overdose fugue state. That's probably a pretty good description of it. Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo fame scored the whole damn series, which is fun, and it's just it's hard to describe. Like there were bits. Winter Steel was one. It was a bunch of marionettes, and it was this biker chick trying to find like her lost boyfriend and like running around the town. I don't know, the city or something. It's strange. It's wonderful. They are sadly not on DVD, the full show. There's some very, very out of print VHS tapes with a couple episodes. There was a DVD that was put out years and years ago. It was just a select handful, but it is on YouTube now, full episodes. And if you like weird animation, Spike and Mike's Animation Festival, anything, if you like Vertigo Comics is a really good example. If you like stuff like that, and you've never heard of Liquid Television, I highly recommend it. It holds up very well today because the animation was just strange, and it's just a bunch of art school kids just fucking around and having fun and making weird things. Some of the animation is stunning. Some of it's really crappy, but it's all very interesting. A lot of people who worked on it went on to do stuff. Like I said, Beavis and Butthead, Mike Judge. Oh, the original Office Space with Milton and his stapler. The original Office Space animation short that would then go on to become the movie one day premiered on Liquid Television. But a lot they worked on Ren and Stimpy. They worked on shows like The Max, which is another great MTV animated show. It's wonderful, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Comfort food in 2020, and I just wanted to share it with y'all. It's just a wonderful collection of animated shorts, and it's weird as shit. So highly recommend.
So I have to thank Liquid Television for giving me Daria.
Yes,
because Liquid Television gave us Beavis and Butthead, and Beavis and Butthead gave us Daria.
Yeah.
Liquid Television, so thank for Daria.
Yeah, exactly.
It was essentially just like a way to get spotted, wasn't it? It was like they took cartoons by animators who were kind of unsigned and were kind of just still working on like the independent level. And if you were on like Liquid Television, there was a possibility you'd kind of get given the budget to turn your show into a series. And it didn't happen to a lot of them, but it still just created this really good showcase and like time window. Cartoon Network later in the 90s did something really similar, but obviously far, far more family friendly, called Cartoon. And that was like where we got like Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab and stuff. But it was basically, if you've made a show, we might show your show and the right people might see it. But at the same time, for a lot of us growing up in the early 90s, you could just kind of crash out in front of this stuff and just see some really kind of wild, like unfettered animation. Another
thing for me, because in 91 I was 10 or 11, give or take.
Okay.
And I'd always I was kind of a latchkey kid, so I grew up just watching whatever interested me, so I already kind of had that proclivity towards strange things. And then I would see this show, and it just blew my mind that there were first of all, there were cartoons, there were puppets, different things, and they weren't acting like the Saturday morning cartoons that were such a huge staple of my life at that point.
Yeah.
And it was so eye-opening to me to think oh, okay, they can make cartoons, but they're weird, and clearly for an audience older than me, but that's possible. That's a reality. And it opened so many doors for me. And they would do really cool shit. They would show anime shorts from the 80s, stuff that had just never been seen in the States, but they were able to bring over, and it's great stuff. Very, very good.
I have a question for our non-American host. Does the term latchkey kid mean anything to you?
Yeah, totally. Because
Yeah.
I was one as well. So
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that if that wasn't a uniquely American term, that is going to be lost on our international audience.
Now, how about basket of crickets?
That one's right.
I'm going to start using it now, all the time.
That sounds like a saying that a frog would have.
Michigan J Frog.
Well, not that frog, but a better frog.
Oh,
a frog that wasn't made fun of on the Chappelle show.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with Charlotte. Charlotte, I do not know what you are talking about today. What is Bury Me, My Love?
It's a very short game about a couple, and one of them is attempting to make the journey to Europe from Syria. And basically, you play as the husband who's been left behind, and you communicate with your wife through text messages. The entire game takes place through basically WhatsApp, and you basically follow your wife as she communicates her trying to get out of Syria and trying to get to Europe so that she can set up home there, and then you can follow her. This all takes place when the conflict in Syria had just started. And so basically the game it's kind of about how your choices sort of impact your relationship with your wife, and also what she decides to do, and her choices can dictate how far she gets. So from what I've understood, there are a huge amount of endings and lots of different choices to make before you even leave Syria. So if you stop by at a certain area to help out, because your wife, if the wife does, because the wife is a doctor, so she can stop by and sabotage her own escape in a way by deciding to help other people. who she does her traveling with can have an impact on how far she gets. There's a lot of moral decisions that the wife has to make, and you as the husband sort of chip in and, you know, guide her. And often she'll disagree with you and do something else anyway, but you can sort of influence her a little bit. And yeah, there's plenty of sort of routes it can take. You can sadly, your wife can die trying to escape. Or she can get really far through to Europe and settle in a country where she has a chance of using her experience as a doctor. In my first playthrough, she ended up settling in Italy. She got stuck in Italy and couldn't really make it across the border to France because of police sending her back, which was kind of like a middling ending because she escaped Syria and she was safe, but at the same time, the chances are that she's going to be working in lower paid work because she can't speak Italian. So it's a really interesting game because it does a lot very subtly to dispel myths about asylum seekers and migrants from Syria. Just from the very basic things like you're communicating through smartphone. Like often people say, oh, why do asylum seekers have smartphones if they're in so much trouble? And it's like, well, yeah, but if you're an asylum seeker, you go with the stuff that you have. You're not like stuck there selling everything you have, are you? The stuff that you have when you get into the situation, you often still have with you. And things like the wife being a doctor, things like, you know, it does a good job to explain, you know, why there's this whole thing in the UK about why don't they stop in a different country, and it's like does a great deal of work to explain why the wife wants to get to France or to the UK. Yeah, and just things like it explains that very well that not all migrants are the same. There's very clear personality and differences between all of the different characters you meet, even the ones that are also from Syria. The husband and wife are constantly bantering with each other, and they have arguments, but also they make fun of each other, which sort of underlines the fact that people who are in trouble, like in terms of, you know, seeking asylum, aren't always miserable and down in the dumps. Even when you're in a crisis, you still find time to, you know, take the piss out of your partner and things like that. It's just a really, really good game because it really sort of puts you in the shoes of what it's like to be an asylum seeker without overdoing stereotypes. It's from what I've heard from knowing people who work with asylum seekers, it's a very sort of realistic sort of portrayal of that situation. And it was actually built, I did a little bit of research afterwards about like how this game came into being, and they sort of took the story of somebody who was seeking asylum in Germany, I believe, and their WhatsApp conversations with her, and just took inspiration from the fact that it's not as if all of their conversations with her were really, you know, she had a difficult time settling in Germany, but often the conversations were quite light-hearted and still, you know, just chatting about the things she managed to do. Like I saw a presentation that the game producers made, just showing her, texting them saying, look, I got my German exam results, because she had to sit a German language exam. And it's just stuff like that, like, you know, capturing the realism of the sort of conversations that they had with her. So it was a really, really good game. Definitely a lot of replay value just to see, you know, how your decisions affect where you end up. It's quite interesting that stopping and helping didn't get me killed. So I'm wondering what does get you killed, actually, like what decisions. I mean, there was some very tense moments like fleeing through the woods. There's certain parts of Eastern Europe where the crossing is extremely dangerous, and there's like landmines and border guards and things. And I think I got quite lucky with the decisions I made there. So maybe it's there that you can get killed rather than in Syria itself. So I'd like to try those different endings because there are that many of them, and I'd like to get an even better ending, and I'd like to see a worse ending before I sort of am finished with the game. But it was a really good experience. It was really interesting, really entertaining, and I feel like I learned a lot through playing it.
How long was your first run through it?
I think it was about maybe 2.5, 3 hours.
Okay, so not that long at all.
No, it's very short. I think the estimate I got when I was looking it up beforehand was like 1.5 to 2 hours. So I think because my ending, I did get quite far through Europe. I was playing it probably a bit longer than a lot of other people. I think if your story ends in Eastern Europe or in Beirut or like further closer to Syria, then you're not going to be playing for as long. But
yeah. This sounds fascinating. Like as soon as you started talking about it, I'm like, oh wait, now I remember this game. This is the game that's played that's nothing but a text message. And I just looked it up. It does not look that expensive. I may have to pick it up because this just sounds like riveting, and it's something I want to play more of. Definitely to get a different worldview on some of the matters that we have going on in our real world. So awesome. Thank you for talking about this because it was on my radar, slipped completely off with everything that also happened in 2020. But yeah, I think I'm going to get that. What did you play it on?
I played it on my laptop.
Okay.
You can play it on mobile, right? I assume.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's on Android and iOS, and I think it's on Switch. But the page only directed me to the UK store, so I don't know if it's worldwide or not. But that maybe.
I mean, to just explain a little bit of the text messaging, there's not a huge amount of choices that you have, but some of them are pretty interesting. Like you can often just react with an emoji, and it's like it throws you off a bit at the beginning that your wife is telling you that there's been bombing in the part of Syria that she's moved to because she's got to move to a more dangerous part of Syria to escape Syria, and just reacting to that with like a crying face emoji just seems so wrong at first, but it's like, what would you do in that situation? Like, it's like, how do a husband and wife talk to each other when one of them is in a very a more dangerous part of the world, but the other one has like also experienced that themselves? It was really sort of interesting to see how the conversation was like, it was real, and it wasn't like they were just constantly panicking at each other all the time. It was like they were trying to maintain a bit of levity beyond all the tragedy. I think that's what humans do a lot of the time. Like if you're in a really tragic situation, you end up talking about it quite flippantly because that's the only way. You'd have a nervous breakdown if you didn't.
This is Podtoid.
All right, that is it for games, which means it is time for the news.
This is the news.
And last week there was not so much to talk about, but of course the biggest stories of the week happened on Saturday, which is yesterday of when we're recording this, at the DC Fandome online event. It is a full day of DC Comics, TV shows, movies, and game news. We had new trailers for Wonder Woman 1984 that finally showed off Kristen Wiig's Chitara. That's her name, right? Or is it? No,
it's just
Chitara.
Chitara's
Cheetah.
It's
Chitara's Thundercats.
Thundercats, right? Yeah.
They all look the exact same, though.
We also got a trailer for the Justice League Snyder Cut, which, by the way, it looks like it is going to be confirmed that it's going to be released as a 4-part miniseries rather than a feature-length 4-hour film. However, it seems like they may also put it together as a single film after that. It's kind of up in the air right now. I've read 2 different things on it just this morning. So we'll see.
CJ, when is that coming out, the Snyder Cut?
May 2021.
Fuck. I was really hoping we could just lump that in 2020 and get it all over with at once.
The world's not that kind, Occams. We also got a behind-the-scenes look at James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, an animated teaser for Black Adam starring The Rock, and our first look at Robert Pattinson in The Batman. As a fan of the Riddler, I hope to God that movie is good, but at least that Batmobile looks dope as hell.
Yeah, and I just want to say that trailer is incredibly well edited. From the music syncing up with various hard cuts to the way the actual logo at the end transitions and comes into context with the Batman logo. That is some goddamn good editing. So I watched that trailer like 5 times and even downloaded it and threw it into an examples folder. So I'm pretty excited for that movie. Just hoping it lives up to the trailer.
Yeah, me too. Like, I can't wait for that fucking film. I just really hope that I have total faith in like the cast and the crew. I just want like Warner's to just keep their fucking grubby hands off it and not, why don't you do this and why don't you do this? And because I think Batman needs another break. It's been a long time since Batman Begins. Do you know what I mean? He needs another break, and I believe Pattinson can do it, and I believe Reeves can do it, and they used a cut of Nirvana on the trailer, which I'm all about. So, but no, it's of everything they showed yesterday, that's just get out of the way. That was the thing that had me the most hype.
Yeah.
Well, now we have two Batmans because they also announced that Batfleck's returning in the Flash movie. So this
got to pay alimony or something.
it is Ben Affleck, so probably. This DC extended universe is just all over the place,
mate.
Well, I mean, they talked about how they don't really give a crap about continuity. Like the overall general plan is like, if somebody wants to make a movie that's just in its own universe, they can do that. They're not going to chase after everything has to be in a singular continuity like Marvel. They're chasing after this idea that like, if somebody wants to make a trilogy of movies that are in their own universe, they can. Which is probably the better approach lately after trying to do what Marvel's been doing.
Yeah, I would say it's less that they're doing that on purpose and more that they fucked it up to begin with, so now they have to.
Yeah, sure.
How many times in the next 5 years, whether through video games or through films or through TV shows, are we going to see Martha Wayne have her necklace pulled off?
I'm sure they'll figure out some way to shoehorn that into the Flash movie. My thing with the DC movies is that after Zack Snyder stopped being involved with them, they all seem to get better. Wonder Woman was better. Shazam was better. Aquaman was better. So hopefully we're on an upswing here. Let me rephrase that. I don't think that
had anything with him leaving, though. Like, the pre-production on that stuff was years. And then it was just that. I think then it was just his awful take on the Justice League, honestly, was a singular event. But hey, I could be wrong.
Well, we'll find out in May 2021. So of course, for this show, the two biggest announcements of Fandome were the games. And first up was Gotham Knights. After being teased for quite some time, we finally got to see what this game is. Batman is dead. Wink, wink. In his place rises four members of the Bat family. They are Batgirl, Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood. And it's the Tim Drake version of Robin. You can play as any of those four characters in solo or two-player co-op as you work to save Gotham in the world without Batman. Watching the gameplay, it has the look of the Arkham games if you're a person who's only seen the trailers of those video game series. It looks to have a lot more RPG presence than Arkham has had in the past. Everything from character levels to numbers flying out of enemy heads when you hit them. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but Chris, you know me, I love Batgirl way too much to skip out on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm with everything you just said. Like, of the games that they showed or the games that are announced, it's probably the one I'm most looking forward to. We talked about, I'm not jumping the gun here. I'd say we talked about the Suicide Squad game a week ago or two, and I said that these studios are going to have to start kind of doing something different. And I'm not going to blame them for doing something different. But, I'm not going to fucking lie to you. I'd rather they just did another Arkham game, even if it was with those characters. Even if it was with those characters and they didn't have Batman in Wink or whatever. But the idea of, I don't know if this is going to have, we're going to go full on into, the gear and the progression of kind of the Avengers game. But I like that this looks like an Arkham game, and I like that it's kind of got the stealth, and the characters are great. Batgirl looks great. She's wearing a take of the Batgirl Burnside gear, which is my favorite look for Batgirl. But part of me is just can you just do it like the others? Can you just do it like the other games? I really appreciate you changing things up, but maybe don't. Maybe just give us the four characters and. I don't want to see the numbers. I'm not bothered about the numbers. I got Diablo for the numbers. Do you know what I mean?
But that's the thing, though. They could so easily, I think, drop those numbers and kind of ease up a bit on that UI in terms of just numbers on screen and health bars and focus more on it trying to be an Arkham experience, but with leveling and minor RPG elements. And that combined with, the 4 characters, I think would be a big enough difference that I'm still excited enough to play it. But yeah, it's the UI. Like, the UI is the point of contention here, and I think there's enough time, I hope anyways, to just drop that stuff. I don't think we need to have health bars and numbers coming out of heads.
I don't think I mind that too much. I like you guys would prefer to have another Arkham experience, like a core actual Arkham sequel to whatever. But I'm not against this studio that didn't necessarily put out the best of the Arkham series, Arkham Origins. There's, debatable about where it falls into the ranking of those 4 games, 5 if you include the Blackgate ones for PS, Vita, and 3DS. But I'm interested. The only thing that kind of disappointed me with this trailer is that I don't really care about Red Hood, and I thought this would have been a great chance for them to introduce some of the newer Batman characters to the fold, and like getting Batwing in there. I think that would have been a better choice than this gun-heavy character of Red Hood. And Batwing, for those who don't know, is the Batman of Africa.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, they did a series, I believe it's called Batman Incorporated, where there were Batman.
Yeah.
He did there's like a Batman of Italy or France, I think. There's a Batman of Africa. I think there's one in Japan as well. So, but Batwing, he's pretty dope.
Or obviously, like Batwoman, who's kind of my favorite character of the Batman family. That would have been cool as well. But I guess there's your gun guy for the gun guys.
In the trailer, when he's like shooting a bad guy, it looks like he's shooting lasers. Like, I just wish they would just shoot the people in the fucking head. Like, you have guns, you're not shooting lasers. Just shoot him in the head. It's always it's nitpicky, but I just hate the way they do the bullets. It makes it look like little like Jubilee light explosions on the bodies.
They're chasing that ESRB teen rating.
But like I say, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm really looking forward to that game. Like, I can't wait to kind of play as those characters. I think Nightwing's cool. It's been a long time since Arkham Knight. Do you know what I mean? And I'm well up for it. And I don't mind Origins. It has some design problems, but it also has some really ingenious stuff going on here. Boss fights are great. The crime scene investigation's great. So, and they've had a few years that studio's had a few years since then to grow and they've got new technology to play with. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm just hoping, between now and launch, that they can just kind of fine tune it to be, as good as its predecessors.
Well, it's coming in 2021, and I believe it's coming to current gen consoles, except for Switch, as well as next gen consoles. So you won't necessarily need to upgrade right away in order to play it. I'm interested to see how they incorporate other Batman villains into this, because I really like what they did with Mr. Freeze just in this short gameplay vignette that they showed of how he's taken over this building and frozen it, and the way that you traverse around the frozen blocks that he's created. I really want to see what they do with other characters, like if Poison Ivy is in it, what's her plant wonderland going to look like? So I'm really curious. I'm always interested in the Batman game, even if it doesn't have the same finesse as the Arkham series. I'm absolutely going to give this a shot day one, just so I can play as Batgirl.
And CJ, I really, really hope that this time around they give Poison Ivy some pants.
I mean, it's not the fact that she's wearing leaf underwear that bothers me. It's the laziness of the red shirt. That is just a button-up shirt with one button. Come on.
It's so like she just put on her boyfriend's work clothes and just fuck that. That's some of the worst design I've seen in a long time.
So that game's coming out next year. Even further out is the second game of the show, and let me just pause to say that I am surprised there was not an announcement for a new Lego Batman. It seemed like that was the only thing missing from DC Fandome, because other than that, this was actually a pretty good presentation from them given the circumstances. Although they did do a celebrity edition of the werewolf game, and boy, that just went on forever. Anyways, the second game was a CGI teaser for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. There wasn't 100% confirmation that it will be a games as a service title, though that is the strongest rumor associated with it. The 4 protagonists revealed so far is Harley Quinn, because less people would be interested if she wasn't in it, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and King Shark, who really doesn't eat enough people in the trailer for my taste. At the end of the trailer, we get a quick look at the prime target for their mission in Metropolis, which is, of course, an evil-looking Superman.
Well, you called it. What if Superman was bad? Has anyone explored that
What
before?
if?
Whoa, Christopher, hold the phone, sir.
Superman bad? Very exciting.
Boy, we've had this discussion before. Not at all interested in fighting against evil Superman, because evil Superman is just tired. Anyways, after the trailer, we got a little bit more information on the game. First of all, it will be an action shooter title, so expect guns to play a major role in the combat. Chris, you called that from a mile away.
Yeah, I just know it. I was like, it was a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? I was just like, they're not going to be grappling around and stealth taking people down. They're just going to be shooting everyone.
Yeah. Harley will be grappling around, but she's still going to be, blowing them up and shooting them in the head. Each character will have their own unique skills, and weapons in the game can be customized. And finally, you can play as solo or in a group, but when you are playing solo, you will always have your 3 AI partners with you, and you can switch between them on a whim, kind of like in Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Occams, with this trailer and the videos we got on James Gunn's movie, how are you feeling about the squad right now?
I gotta say, watching the trailers, because I forgot completely with those with the movie that there were like 19 people in it, and there's some of them that are like just fun. Nathan Fillion.
Man.
Polka Dot. Yeah, that guy who plays Polka Dot Man. And it, like, for a second you can see him like throw polka dots. It's fun. It looks so the movie. It looks like James Gunn is like, okay, I want to make another Guardians of the Galaxy type of movie. Not another Guardians of the Galaxy, certainly. But I want to make it, probably, I would assume R, hopefully. Fingers fucking crossed it's a rated R. And it's going to be silly and fun and kind of, it looks like it'll be a fun movie. And I'm kind of excited about it. I really am. And the game looks, well, I don't know what the game looks like because that was the CG trailer. But the atmosphere seemed okay. What I really need, and that reminds me, I was really happy to see, I'm a big fan of a comedian podcast guy named Steve Agee. He's just a big, funny, giant nerd of a man. And I was really happy to find out that he is like the body for King Shark. And there was a brief shot in that, like, not trailer where you can see him wearing this like wireframe shark. He looks like the blaster half of Master Blaster from from Mad Max, and so that made me happy. But I really need for this game to, if it's customizable outfits and all, I need King Shark, who's already a kind of a personal favorite of mine. Just he's a giant shark man. I like sharks, and street sharks are a thing. That being said, I need a costume where he's a street shark, and I need him to like swim through concrete just like on the show.
I will say, being a King Shark fan, it is so nice to have him in Harley Quinn, to have him in the upcoming Suicide Squad movie, and be one of the main characters of the Suicide Squad game. So nice to see this character get in there, due.
I have 3 words for you, my friend. Synergy. Oh, wait. That's Mousetrap.
I mean, John Cena as Peacekeeper. Hey, you got me. You got my ticket. Or streaming fee, depending.
My first thought when I saw John Cena in the movie is that I hope he's only in it for 5 minutes recreating the washcloth scene from Trainwreck.
Nearly half the movie, almost all the movie, in fact. Peacekeeper OG needs to be the main guy.
What? The main guy is Rick Flag, the famous superhero, Rick Flag. Rick Flag sounds like a patriotic themed wrestler, by the way.
They all kind of look like they're gay for pay porn stars.
The film I'm not too bothered about. I like some of the cast. It's nice to see Idris Elba, and Peter Capaldi as the Thinker is inspired. But as for the game, I stand by what I said a couple of weeks ago. I know it's going to be a great game in terms of mechanically and how it looks. Rocksteady don't make shit games. Like it's going to look good. It's going to move well. It's going to play well. But I'm not interested in playing like a big co-op shooter starring the Suicide Squad. So it's not for me, but I have no doubts the game will be good.
I'm interested in playing it to see how it plays, but I don't want to like kill an evil Wonder Woman. I don't want to kill an evil Hawkman. I don't want to kill an evil Martian Manhunter. It's just, no matter what the reasoning behind it is, whether they're under someone's spell, whether it's a weird virus, whether it's Superman from a different dimension, it's just like you have this what looks to be, and again, it's just a CG trailer. A beautifully rendered Metropolis, which, by the way, is I think the best thing about that trailer for me is that we're not in Gotham, is that we're going to go to the light side of side of Manhattan and go with Metropolis. So I'm really interested in all of that. But at the end of the day, if it's just now I got to go kill Green Arrow, well,
I think what they're doing is, if you look at that kind of giant thing slap bang in the middle of Metropolis, I think it's like a Brainiac thing. I think it's like, that looks kind of like Brainiac's head. So I guess it's kind of like a mind control thing.
And that's so fucking boring.
It is.
It would make it a much more interesting game to me is if they had, so you're the Suicide Squad, and there's like the JLA are doing stuff all around you, but it's kind of like, there was a scene in when Thanos invaded New York in one of the comics where Spider-Man and Daredevil just sat on a rooftop and ate popcorn and watched. Because they're Spider-Man and Daredevil, and it's not Thanos, Galactus. So like they, what are they gonna do? They can't do shit. It would have been much more interesting to see them like in the Suicide Squad kind of work around the context of the JLA dealing with these huge like world extinction event level things, but like try to maybe behind the scenes to tweak stuff to like, okay, now that Superman's dealing with Stognar, the moon god or something, they can go like steal some secrets or break into a base or rob something and deal like make the situation work to their advantage, but also deal with the challenges of having all this stuff going on. That'd have been a more interesting game to me.
That sounds like an incredible fucking video game, a million times more so than whatever this is.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't really know what this is.
I've heard enough to not be interested.
Okay, I can see that. But Occams, Starro, right? That's
I know. I'm so excited. That's such a dumb B-tier villain, and I love it. Because, he's like a legit, he can fuck shit up. Because he's Starro, and he can take over people pretty easily and do his thing. But, it's a giant starfish with an eye. It looks like something the Joker would wear for, a sex thing. It's great.
It definitely looks like something out of the cocaine-induced DC Comics of the 70s. So,
yeah. And
maybe that's where it did originate. We are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, we have a community shout-out this week.
Yeah, we do. Shout out to community user Roger, who celebrated, I think I'm saying that not right, Roger, who celebrated a birthday. And if I could just take 1 second for something personal.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, hold on.
My name is. Mi nombre es.
Okay, see? Okay. That's Google Translate right there.
Well, I appreciate you doing that because it lets me hit my punchline that CJ rolled over of my favorite member of the Suicide Squad being El Nombre, but I can kind of crowbar it in here. So.
All right, you got me. I don't know how I got a B in Spanish, but clearly didn't know that that's what Spanish for name is. So thanks, Occams. Thanks for making me feel like an idiot.
My pleasure.
Okay. That is it for this episode of Podtoid. On behalf of Charlotte, Occams, Chris, Dan, and myself, thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or the Destructoid YouTube channel.